In today's video, I'll be going over the gatekeepers of the UFC. I will go division by division, starting with the flyweight, going to heavyweight, and giving one fighter in each division who is a gatekeeper. Now, I do have some criteria for this. Number one, you can never have been a champion. And number two, you have to have beaten some guys in the top 10. It's not just you lose to everyone or you beat everyone. No, you have a little bit of both. So let's get started with flyweight. With flyweight, I have Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott. Now, he did fight for the title back in the day against Demetrius Johnson. And this guy is the ultimate gatekeeper of the flyweight division. I mean, they don't really have a gatekeeper of the flyweight division. You could say maybe Brandon Royval, maybe Kai Kara-France. But I think Tim Elliott is the true gatekeeper of the flyweight division. He can beat the lower level guys, maybe the top 15 guys. But once it gets to a competition where he's facing someone better, he never wins. And that truly is the definition of a gatekeeper, right? The good guys get through, and the not so good guys don't get through. And it's that happy medium. And that's what Tim Elliott is. I like Tim Elliott. I think he's a cool fighter. He's got that story with his ex-wife. And yeah, it was hard to find a gatekeeper for the flyweight division, but if there's going to pick one, I'm going to go with Tim Elliott. For Bantamweight, I have Rob Font. Rob Font is the gatekeeper of the Bantamweight division. Every single time he faces higher level competition, he loses. And every single time he faces not so good competition, he wins. For instance, Deiveson Figueiredo a couple months ago beats Rob Font, truly gatekeeping the top 10, losing to Sandhagen, Chito Vera, Jose Aldo, Deiveson Figueiredo. But also beat Adrian Yanez, who was very high up and highly touted coming into that fight. Everyone thought he was going to be Rob Font. Not so fast. He checks him at the line, says, "You're denied, can't get in." The true gatekeeper of the Bantamweight division. And the Bantamweight division might be the most stacked division. And out of all the fighters, Rob Font is the one taking out contenders, the one who's losing to the higher up guys. He's taking the hard fights and taking the up-and-comers. And that's why he's the true gatekeeper of the Bantamweight division. For featherweight, I have Josh Emmett. Yes, Josh Emmett is the gatekeeper of the featherweight division. Look, anytime a special fighter comes and faces Josh Emmett, they steamroll him. Elliott, Yair Rodriguez. And anytime there's someone not as good, he beats him. Dan Ige, Calvin Kattar. Now, those were close fights. And yes, he knocked out Bryce Mitchell, but it's the body of work with Josh Emmett. He'll never get to the top, right? I know last year he fought for an interim belt and that came off of 2 fluke wins. And I get it. He's in the top 10. He's a decent fighter. But let's be real, anyone with some decent skill in that division is beating Josh Emmett. And he has the chance to knock out anyone with the power. So if you are good enough to able to avoid the power strikes, you should easily beat Josh Emmett. And that's why he's a gatekeeper of the 145-pound division. For lightweight, it was hard to come up with someone, but I thought no one better than Beneil Dariush. Yes, Beneil Dariush. I know of recent he's been sliding, but look at the levels of competition he's facing. Before he fought Charles Oliveira last June, he came off a win against Mateusz Gamrot and kind of fraud-checked him in a way because everyone was picking Gamrot to beat Beneil Dariush. And he kind of dominates Gamrot. And I was like, okay, is Gamrot even that good? Or maybe Beneil Dariush. Maybe Beneil Dariush is good. All right. Takes on Oliveira. A decent amount of people are picking him to beat Oliveira. What happens to him? Gets knocked down in the first round. All right, you lost to Charles Oliveira. He's one of the best fighters in the lightweight division. How about Arman Sarukian? Gets Arman Sarukian, main event, Austin, Texas. What happens? Gets knocked down in the first round. So there's a pattern with Beneil Dariush. Anytime he fights an up-and-comer who's got very high skill and or very good in the division, he never beats him. And he has always taken out the Mateusz Gamrots of the division, the old man Tony Ferguson, who people thought he still had something in the tank. A lot of fighters Beneil Dariush has taken out. And that's why he's a gatekeeper of the 155 division. Yeah, you could say Dan Hooker, but I think Dan Hooker is a little bit lower in the rankings to put this, and I think Beneil Dariush fits perfectly for the gatekeepers. Up next at 170, we have Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns might be the best fighter on this Gatekeepers list for a good reason. 170 is kind of a mess right now. And Gilbert Burns seems to be the one gatekeeping all the frauds out of the title contention. I know his last fight against Belal Muhammad wasn't the best. He had messed up his shoulder, but he lost that fight. I know a couple years ago he fought Kamaru Usman for the belt, but ever since that, he's been kind of just floating around the top 5, beating Neil Magny, beating Jorge Masvidal, right? Losing to Belal Muhammad, losing to Hamza Chimaev. He's a higher echelon of a gatekeeper, right? If you have extreme skill in the 170-pound division, you could probably beat Gilbert Burns. And if you don't, you're probably going to lose to him. And his next fight against Jack Della Maddalena will prove, is Jack Della Maddalena that good? He's going up against a gatekeeper. Can he beat him? We'll find out. For the middleweight division, I have Marvin Vettori. Yes, Marvin Vettori. The big ogre, the big, non-powerful, big-looking dude at the 185-pound division. Yes, Marvin Vettori is the gatekeeper of the 185-pound division. He fraud-checked Roman Dolidze. Roman Dolidze was favored to beat Marvin Vettori, and he lost to Marvin Vettori. Paulo Costa was hyped up as this big puncher. Marvin Vettori went in there and beat him in a 5-rounder. Now, obviously, Marvin Vettori just got his butt whooped by Jared Cannonier in his last fight, and he's lost many other times to Robert Whittaker, Israel Adesanya, more names after that, of course, but he truly is the gatekeeper of that middleweight division, right? He'll be taking on Brendan Allen next, and this is a good test for Brendan Allen, a guy who's kind of well-rounded in Marvin Vettori, who's not going to do anything exceptional, but not really going to do anything bad. So this will be a good test for Brendan Allen. I think he'll go in there and beat Marvin Vettori, and that'll show that Brendan Allen's here to fight, and he's here to stay. And Marvin Vettori will just keep fighting these, come off a win against a contender that isn't that good, faces a higher level guy, will get dominated, come back, fight back in the rankings, maybe win a close fight, or maybe even lose. And then the pendulum swings with Marvin Vettori, right? High level fight, loses. Low level fight, wins. It's just back and forth, and he's always going to be in that 4 to 8 range, I think, in the middleweight division. And that's why he's the true gatekeeper, right? Any guy who's really fighting him, if you're hyping him up, if you want a new middleweight contender for the belt, you give him Marvin Vettori. That's a tough ask, a tough guy to finish. You really got to go hard in that fight. So I'm not trying to disrespect Marvin Vettori's skill set. I don't think it's that bad, right? But it's also not that good. So if you are high level enough to beat Marvin Vettori, you probably deserve to be in the top 5. For light heavyweight, I have 2 people. Yes, I couldn't come to an agreement, but how about we do 2 guys who face each other, Johnny Walker and Anthony Smith. I think respectively, these guys are in different parts of their career, and that's why I put both of them here. Anthony Smith a little bit older in his career. He's kind of the gatekeeper of like the top 15-ish, right? If you got any guy who's like top 10, top 15-ish, you give him to Anthony Smith, and if he can't beat Anthony Smith, well, good luck at ever winning a light heavyweight belt. I'll say that. But yeah, and then with Johnny Walker too, he's kind of the gatekeeper of the top 10, top 5-ish, right? He'll fight the Magomed Ankalaevs. He'll lose. He'll fight the Paul Craigs. He'll win. And same thing with Marvin Vettori, right? The pendulum swings with Johnny Walker. He's never going to be a champion. Let's just get that out of the way. He's never going to be a champion. But I don't think in the next 3 years he'll ever fall out of the top 15, if you know what I mean. He's got decent enough power to keep him around there. And if he faces a guy who's fringe top 15, like a Dustin Jacoby, he'll beat the Dustin Jacobys of the world, right? He'll beat the Alonzo Menafields of the world. So that's really what I think it comes down to with Johnny Walker, is he'll beat those guys anytime he faces anyone good. If he faces a Rakic, he'll probably lose. If he fights a Yuri, he'll lose. If he fights Magomed, he'll lose, And with Anthony Smith, his last fight against Khalil Roundtree, he kind of got really exposed for not being that well-rounded, and Khalil Roundtree just beat him up bad in that fight. And you could see the signs coming with Anthony Smith, right? Against Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker kicked his leg for 15 minutes and won that fight solely off the leg kicks. The pendulum keeps swinging with both these guys, right? And truly are the gatekeepers of their division. And they will continue to fight low level or high level competition and win and lose respectively. And then for heavyweight, I got Alexander Volkov. Yes, Volkov's actually not a bad fighter if you really look at the tape. If you actually watch Volkov fight, he's not that bad of a heavyweight. Why do I put this? Look at any good heavyweight fighter. There's not many of them. Tom Aspinall, lost to him. Cyril Gane, lost to him. Curtis Blades, lost to him. Right, but he can beat the other guys. He can beat the Tai Tuivasas and Jairzinho Rosenstrikes of the world. But when anytime he gets up into the high level heavyweight competition, he always folds. He always gets dominated. I shouldn't say the Cyril Gane fight was dominance, but he got outclassed in that fight. And when it comes to Volkov, he's gonna always, with the frame of his, he's always gonna outclass the not so good heavyweights. And it's a theme with all these guys, right? I keep bringing it up. It's the pendulum. They're always, anytime they fight higher level competitions, they lose. And then they go back, they fight back in the rankings. What happens? Oh, I'm this measly contender who we want to see how good he is. Or maybe, oh, I'm this fringe top 10 guy, let's see how good he is. And then he'll probably win that fight. Come back, fight a contender. It's the same thing, right? It's the same cycle with these guys. They'll never get a title shot now. And in their career, they're never going to get a title shot again. They're kind of past their primes. And now they're just here to gatekeep each division. If you like this video, like and subscribe. And if you have an idea for a video, comment down below. And this was pretty fun making. I'll be doing some more videos like this in the coming weeks. So yeah, until next time, peace.